Godot is one of the most tragic and most flawed characters in the Ace Attorney series. By the end of Trials and Tribulations, the player has such a great understanding of who he is and why he does what he does. However, he doesn't fall into the classic Ace Attorney pure evil. He's a multifaceted villain that does make mistakes. But in order to understand Godot, we must go back to the beginning. Diego Armando was a defense attorney working under Marvin Grossberg. He acts as Mia Fey's mentor during her first trial, and almost ends up helping her to victory before their client dies on the stand. Because of the trial, he ends up looking more into Dahlia Hawthorne, who is believed to be the true culprit of Fey's first case. Him and Mia also fall in love soon after the trial. Dahlia Hawthorne ends up poisoning him, which puts him into a coma for 5 years. Within those 5 years, we get the events of Ace Attorney 1 and 2, plus the flashback in the first chapter of 3, in which Dahlia is found guilty and sentenced to death. When Armando wakes up, he discovers that his girlfriend Mia had been murdered 2 years previously. He then irrationally blames Phoenix Wright for this and decides to protect Mia's sister Maya at all costs. Even worse, Dahlia Hawthorne is now dead, allowing him to fully focus his rage on Wright. Armando becomes a prosecutor and takes up the guise of Godot, sporting a super cool visor that allows him to see after the poisoning, with a simple limitation that he can't see red on a white background. It's with this premise that we begin to see the flaws in Godot's character. Ace Attorney is a character-driven series, but I've always found that its villains are almost laughably evil, especially the big bads like Von Karma, Gant, Ungard, and Gavin. I think Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice are a bit better with it, but it doesn't get better than Godot. As a player, you can really get into his head and understand why his flaws are what they are, but also understand why he's wrong. It really doesn't get much better than him in terms of Ace Attorney villains. He's the best. Throughout the game, the player gets pretty well acquainted with Godot, seeing as he's the primary prosecutor. He acts as a total nuisance to Wright, just being a total jerk, calling him trite and constantly disrespecting him. However, one thing that I really like about Godot is that while he really does hate Wright, I never feel like he's trying to miscarry justice like Edgeworth and both Von Karmas did in the past. Obviously, he still does his job and prosecutes, trying to prove the defendant guilty, but you can almost see the defense lawyer in him peeking through. When he loses, he doesn't throw a tantrum or hurt himself or others. Well, other than the coffee thing. He accepts it and moves on. Godot's character is probably most known for his rather poor murder plan at the end of the game. At some point, he overhears Morgan Fey telling Pearl about a letter she had hidden. The letter holds plans to kill Maya. Instead of going to the police or something, Godot decides to take this into his own hands. Before we continue, I'm going to go into why I think he did this. Godot is a very independent character. When we catch a glimpse of him in Turnabout Beginnings, he's a hotshot young attorney who was happy being with Mia. His life seemed to be finally falling into place, but suddenly at the hands of Dahlia Hawthorne, all of that changed. He was left alone with no friends, without the love of his life, and severely visually impaired. He's now stuck in a world 5 years in the future where everyone has already passed him by. The guy is clearly not in a proper state of mind, especially since he blames Phoenix Wright for all of his issues. His brain needs someone to blame, especially since the two people who hurt him the most, Dahlia Hawthorne and Red White, who killed Mia, are unreachable. As far as he's concerned, Phoenix is the only one close to Mia who is still distant enough that he can blame. Back to his rather terrible plan, instead of going to the police or warning Maya directly, Godot enlists the help of Misty Fey and Iris, alerting them to the plan. At some point during the plan, Misty Fey channeled Dahlia Hawthorne in order to prevent her from killing Maya. When Godot sees Dahlia, the woman who ruined his life, in Misty's body, he stabs her, killing Misty, but not before Dahlia could strike him, injuring him under his mask. Obviously, like I mentioned, Godot's actions here are really dumb. He tries to take justice into his own hands instead of going to the police for help. However, this is not a stain on his character at all. Like I've been mentioning this whole video, flaws are what makes a character. If Godot was perfect, the community wouldn't like him even half as much. This is why he's so memorable versus someone like Manfred von Karma, who has very few clear flaws outside of just being evil. The way Godot acts during the last trial is great as well. You can tell he wants to be caught. He literally asks Wright to identify the killer. Godot isn't pure evil, he feels remorse for all of the pain that he caused. You can also tell his opinions on Wright are changing. He straight up tells him that he's a great defense attorney before asking him to identify the killer on his own without the help of Mia. Obviously, he doesn't just give up, but his motivation has shifted. If you've seen my video on the character of Phoenix Wright, you'd know why. He wants Nick to do it himself without any help. Throughout the entirety of the game, Godot has not lost to Wright alone. He's lost to the spirit of Mia as well. This can also be a reason for some of his hatred towards Wright during the game. This guy took over his late girlfriend's office, and he can't even win cases on his own? It's not hard to see why his hatred of Wright deepened. In the end, when Wright finally proves that Godot is the killer, his breakdown is quite different from our previous two final culprits. or even 3 if you count Rise from the Ashes. It's quick and over in a literal flash. And then he monologues, explaining almost everything that I've shared so far in this video. He was selfish and he knew it. He's not even sure if he did it to help Maya, but what he does know is that he had a desire for revenge against Dahlia Hawthorne, and thus concludes the arc of one of the best visual novel villains of all time. Godot is a flawed character fueled by tragedy. He's incredibly irrational, but that's part of what makes his character so great. If you liked this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.